Yeah, the initial thought from you, yeah, I think you told me like, yeah, we're gonna see how things go. We'll probably need you in like 3 or 4 months. And then 2 weeks later, I don't know if you just needed somebody to drive you down to Venice every day, but you're like, Chris, I need you. I was like, okay.
I need you to drive me.
Yeah.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to Blood, Sweat, and Balance Sheets, the podcast where I occasionally host it now, don't do it all the time, and get to talk about whatever I want. For this week, our marketing team had a great idea. They wanted to bring on our co-founder, Chief Product Officer, Chris Sluty, to talk about 10 years in Flowcast history. It's been a grind, man. I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today to reflect on all the stuff we've been through over the last 10 years. So welcome, Chris.
Yeah, well, 50 episodes later, thanks for the invite, finally.
You're welcome. There you go.
But yeah, Chris Sluty, one of the co-founders here at Flowcast. We'll go through my history a little bit, but started my career in accounting. I've known Mike for a very long time. We actually met freshman year of college, did all of our accounting classes together, and joined Flowcast right at the beginning. 10 years later, I've had a lot of jobs here at Flowcast, built out the customer success org, run the product org. Just trying to bring product and customer together.
Love it. Perfect. All right, let's go back in time a little bit. I think people like hearing the founding stories, and we've been doing Flowcast for 10 years, but you and I have known each other for what? How old are we now? 20?
That's about
20 years?
20 years.
We've been on it?
20 years
All right,
plus.
So I'm from LA, clearly. I was the LA kid. I moved to upstate New York. Where are you from originally?
I am from upstate New York, Ithaca, New York, and went to school at Syracuse. I don't know why Mike decided to go to school in the winters of upstate New York, but I'm happy he did.
Yeah. I decided it would be a really smart idea to leave LA to go to film school somewhere else, and then didn't get into film school and hacked my way into accounting ultimately. So yeah, that's a whole nother story we can delve into some other time. But I think when you got to Syracuse, did you want to major in accounting from the beginning? We actually haven't talked about this.
Yeah, so I was a general business major. In freshman year, you kind of just do the general courses, right? A lot of general and then some general business courses as well. And by the end of freshman year, you kind of need to decide the path that you're going to go down to, because that's where you're going to get into the specific courses. My brother was 2 years older than us at Syracuse, and he was a finance major originally, and pretty much understood that if you wanted to get a job, you should be an accounting major. So he was a finance major and then came back and did his master's in accounting, and that's how he got his first job at Deloitte. So he pretty much told me, hey, if you want to be able to pay off your student loans, and you're going to be a business major, be an accounting major, because you're going to get a job. So that was pretty much how I picked.
That sounds okay. Yeah, because finance is really cool, but to get a job in finance, I mean, you got to be in an Ivy League school. You got to be connected. It's really, it's tough coming out of Syracuse is a good school and a non-Ivy League.
Connected to New York City, but you had to be top of your class. I was not top of the class.
Yeah, number one gets a job on Wall Street, and that's about it.
Whereas on the accounting side, if you can get through all the accounting classes,
it's war of attrition.
With the help of your friends, you can get a job at the end of the day, and that's essentially what happened.
There you go. I was here to help. Sweet. Okay, similar story for me. Found my way to general business and then took accounting and enjoyed it. Clicked. I got that dopamine hit when everything reconciled. And then, that was when I decided to move forward with it.
There was an element of that general accounting class that everybody had to take where most students were failing that or having a really hard time. And I was like, hey, this makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I got this. So I think that kind of gave me the confidence that oh yeah, I can probably do this compared to the rest of the people in school. So that kind of set me off on that path.
Yeah, because we talk a lot about, we got into job security, for job security and that kind of reason to get into accounting, but it's not an easy profession. It's not for everybody.
Sure.
Do you remember in Accounting 201, it was that was the one where you had to get it to major to
that was the make or break.
Business major.
That's how you weed people out of the profession.
And okay, maybe it was the class right before that where it was that was the minimum you had to do, but that second class was hard. Yeah. And I remember people crying to the professor, no offense to marketing, we'll talk about them later, but 30s out of 100. It was soul crushing numbers on some of these things. So yeah, there's a certain type of person. This stuff clicks within your brain. I think it's a combo of problem solving, not math, not just being able to do math really quickly. It's about the problem solving.
I was always generally good at math, but then working with a bunch of engineers now, it's like, oh, these people are really good at math.
Yeah.
Like, I hit my limit there. Pretty
That's
early
math. Algorithms is math, not adding and dividing.
Yeah.
Totally. So, okay, maybe we'll spare the details on how we met, but suffice to say, it was freshman year over some beers.
Freshman year, we lived in dorms next to each other. And then kind of mutual friend had a class with you. Shout out to Demick. And then I think we started playing basketball together a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know. We just kind of clicked. And then you decided to go into accounting at some point, and all of a sudden we were just in every class together.
Yeah, so we started hanging out more, playing basketball. Shout out to Demick for introducing us. Very much appreciate that. He's the man. And then, and one of the things I remember is we ended up in a couple classes, but one of my strengths was scheduling and figuring out how to minimize our schedule
optimization
and enjoy. Schedule optimization. So I remember the day when they open classes, the registrar thing, and you got to go and rush to get all the classes to get all that done. Yeah. So I'd have that all game planned, and I think you would just copy mine for the most part.
Just copy yours. I think one year we had 8 a.m. classes, like Monday, Wednesday, and then we just decided to trade off on those days. So it's teamwork.
I remember, we had somehow stacked it where it was all Monday, Wednesday.
Yeah.
But it was brutal. It was brutal. It was like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., like back to back. I do remember our last class at least would sometimes get out early. And then,
that's right.
And I never forget our business law class where it was like 7 to 10 p.m. and the teacher ended it at 8 p.m. every day. And we'd hop in the Oldsmobile and go back to South Campus and watch the OC.
OC season 1. Must see TV.
Must see TV. Don't go to season 2. Stop after season 1. It's beautiful if you stop. Just like Lost. If you stop after season 1, you're good. Also bonded over
that's most TV.
Unfortunately, you're probably right there. All right, so we had a good time in college, took a lot of accounting classes together. That was great. We graduated, and then why'd you go to Jersey?
That's a good question. I don't think many people just decide to go to Jersey as their first choice, but had a really good time there. It was interesting. Senior year, we had all the firms kind of come for almost on-sites at Syracuse, right? And, I wasn't like top of the accounting class. So I think I interviewed with a couple of the Big Four, but not all of the Big Four. And then a mid-tier firm came on site, Rothstein Cass. The Cass in Rothstein Cass actually came and spoke to our class, Steve Cass.
Okay.
And, just like he was talking about the culture and everything, and it just kind of clicked with me. I really liked the culture. I liked the people that I started meeting there. I went and interviewed. I got a job, and I was like, hey, this sounds great. So I went for it.
Interesting. So you actually thought about the culture of the firm heading into it?
Well, it's nice when you get accepted, right? So it's not like I had a lot of choices, but I think the mid-tier versus the Big Four just kind of resonated a little bit more to me. So,
well, we'll talk more about how it was probably a really good decision, but I was just so maniacal on like Big Four, whatever. I don't care which one. You know what I mean?
Well, you wanted to get back to LA.
Yeah.
That was part of the equation too. I didn't, I was interested in talking to the Big Four. I liked upstate New York. I grew up there.
Yeah.
So I was talking to like the Big Four about moving to like Rochester
or
Buffalo. Like,
wasn't also like Eisner? You're talking to some of the other firms
Eisner too. Yeah, they were actually in the same building in Jersey as Rothstein Cass.
Wow.
So small world there. But it was cool. Like I didn't know too much about what Rothstein Cass actually did and the firms that they audited. So, I went in there pretty blind, but I actually found the work kind of interesting once I got there.
Okay. And you didn't intern there, right?
I didn't intern. I had one internship in college just at it was Carrier, like as in the Carrier Dome. They had a office in Syracuse, and I did some bookkeeping work for them just to get my credits.
Dude, that summer before senior year was amazing. For the audience, I chose to not do an internship at Big Four because I wanted to enjoy my life before heading out in the real world. And that summer of glory before senior year, hanging out, that was so much fun.
I checked the box on the internship. I'm impressed by all these kids that are going to college now. We're part of the Big Brother, Big Sister program here in Los Angeles, and like, man, these kids are buttoned up. They're trying to get internships as freshmen. They know their path. They know what they want to do with their life. I didn't have anything figured out.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't know how you get into college today. I couldn't get. Whoa.
The bar's higher. The bar's higher. So, everybody, trashes on the millennials or Gen Z, but I think they're hard workers.
I think, yeah. And if the goal is getting into college, they're able to really focus on that goal and making it happen. That's well said. That's a really good point. All right, so yeah, I moved back to LA. I want to get out of. I loved upstate. People were great. I love meeting the people.
Enough
but yeah,
winters.
the weather and New York City didn't really appeal to me for some reason. I don't know why I wasn't into New York, but that didn't appeal to me. So I hacked my way to an LA job through the New York City
there you go.
EY recruiting function. That was shout out to Annalise, the recruiter I still remember from EY, kind enough to get me to the New York office. And then I was like, hey, I actually want to go to LA. Would you mind introducing me to that team?
Did you interview over Christmas break or something like that?
Dude, they flew me out to LA to interview. So I went in for I flew in, interviewed with them for the day, flew back out I had my job offer. They called me after, on the way to the airport, and we're we'd love to have you at the firm. Would you?
There you go.
Yeah. So, I had gotten through. I was to the point where they were going to introduce me to the New York firm.
Got it.
So I was just like, hey, I don't want you to feel like I'm pulling the rug out from under you, but I am pulling the rug out from under you. I actually want to go to LA. Would you be open to introducing me over there? And they were nice enough to set that all up, which now that I know how big companies work, the recruiter who's responsible for the East Coast should not give a damn about the West Coast. But that was super collaborative to help make that happen. So
that's awesome.
That was how I ended up there. And then since I was the one with the job, that's how I got Allison to come out here. My wife now, long-term girlfriend, Chris knows her very well from our days in college as well.
Also met freshman year.
Met freshman year. We'll get into maybe some deeper stories here as we get into the pre-Flowcast days as well with her. But all right, so you're in New Jersey.
Yep.
You're grinding away at Rothstein Cass.
I am.
Let's keep going.
Yeah, so our case is pretty interesting. So they mainly audit investment companies, so hedge fund, private equity. I had no clue that was their focus. I should have probably known that before I started. They pretty much only asked me one question: do you like to travel or not? And I said no. The people that like to travel worked on kind of more of the commercial jobs.
Okay.
And the people that didn't like to travel worked on these hedge fund audits.
How much travel did they do?
The commercial jobs? Yeah, just normal. You were out at the client site, all the time.
In Jersey or
a lot of in Jersey. For some reason, they had a banana distributor, so they would go to someplace in the Caribbean. Was the big trip that one of these teams did.
The only inventory people want to do. Yeah, I'm gonna go count bananas.
Yeah,
in the Caribbean.
and the Dominican Republic or something like that. But yeah, when you're auditing investment funds, there's no inventory.
Mm-hmm.
It's what are your investments, right? So I can get a brokerage statement for the most part and get that. So we didn't have to do a lot of on-site work. There's no inventory counts, no hazing on New Year's Eve, anything like that.
That's nice.
And you were just in the office a lot, right? So it really felt like grad school. You started with I started with 40 other kids in that office. We were all the same age, starting at the same time, and we all worked in the office together. So you're all kind of going through this together. You can learn from each other. I started carpooling with a bunch of the guys. So I made some really good friends there. And, it was one of those things, a lot of people, you don't love audit, but, it pays the bills. But I kind of thought every year I wasn't going to do it. I was going to do something different.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of stuck with it. And, as I went up in the job, it actually got easier for me. I'm pretty good at managing people. I was always a coach. My dad was a basketball coach. My parents were both teachers, so I could always, onboard new people. And just as the job progressed and I moved up in title, the job just got easier and more fun for me. So I actually ended up staying in audit for 7 years.
Yeah.
Which is kind of crazy when I thought initially I'll do this for a year or two.
Yeah. Well, as you move up, it does fit your skill set and personality.
Exactly.
Perfect. You're a high EQ guy who's a good coach and a teacher. You didn't mention both your parents were teachers as well. And so, yeah, it just is in the blood and like just who you are as a human.
Good,
dude.
good
So
teammate. Audit is a team sport at the end of the day. If you get put on a good team and you like your bosses, you're probably going to stay there a little bit longer too. So some of audit is just luck of the draw. I think like people get burned out the first year because they're on like the year-end audit and then they're on the 630 audit and all of a sudden they had a year-long busy season. Yeah, I'm going to quit after that.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yeah, so we had a pretty seasonal business, which I guess is like a mid-tier firm. You could do that. But most of our work, our busy season was a little bit longer. It actually went to like the end of April. But the summers, it really was like summers off. We got paid overtime, which is unheard of.
Yeah.
You banked your overtime and you could use that for vacation. My now wife, and we can get into that story, Kendra, she banked her overtime and did like backpacking trips in Europe, like 3 straight summers.
Whoa, I didn't know that. That's awesome.
For first 3 years in audit, right? So, they just had it set up really well. And they were able to retain people because they had a good like in-person culture. We worked hard, but there was a light at the end of the tunnel. There was a balance. Like you kind of had a lighter summer and then you could ramp up for busy season instead of this year-long thing that happens, I think, everywhere now.
Yeah. It was like, I remember we'd text or talk during all this, and it's like, I was working a ton, and I got on the perpetual year end. My first client was a public company, March 31, and then they're like, hey, welcome to this June 30 year end new client we just picked up. And then, for busy season, we're going to send you out to some other clients to actually do that. And then finally, I got a 9:30 client shoved in my face. So that was that, and I'm not getting paid any more money. The idea of banking hours and rolling it, that's like something you have to shadily do at a big four firm. Like you're not supposed to be doing that.
You're eating your time.
Yeah. I did not eat hours. I was willing to fall on the sword to protect those behind me. That was like a thing I took a lot of pride in, was I did not eat hours, because I'm like, you can't be throwing all these kids after us under the bus to like.
I didn't eat hours, but I also like, I think Kendra still jokes with me today. I would never worked like the 80-hour weeks. I was like a consistent 55 to 65. They just reached a point where you're getting diminishing returns.
Yeah.
And like, I'm just like, am I getting the work done? I haven't had a partner. Somebody was looking at my hours at one point. I think this was like 6 years in. And they're like, why isn't he on more stuff? And the partner's like, he's fine. It's just like, I'm getting my stuff done. I'm driving the team. The team's getting their stuff done. Like that's the things that matter, right? Not the number of hours you're working, right? So I don't know. The culture was just a little bit different at this mid-tier firm. Shout out to RK. We don't exist anymore. We got bought by KPMG. Rest in peace. But a lot of great people.
It was a
great that worked there.
I haven't heard anyone say a bad thing about RK. Like all your friends that I spoke to love working there, and then you obviously had a great event there. You want to delve into some maybe the very special person you met?
Well, before that, there's a how did I get to LA?
Geez, let's take a step back. How the hell did you get out here?
So I started in Jersey, and it just like there's a rotation program, and one year I applied for the rotation program and didn't get it, and I was like 4 years in. I was looking at maybe this is the time I really do leave. And then randomly, a partner in the Beverly Hills office calls me up, and he's like, are you still interested in doing a rotation? It was kind of like out of sight, out of mind for me, because I didn't get it the year before.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that they recruited you into this.
Yeah, right. And I was like, sure. He asked me on a Friday, and he's like, I need an answer on Monday. So I went and talked to my parents. And my parents are in New York, so I was like, are they going to be okay with me moving 3,000 miles away? Luckily, my parents' reaction was, you would be an idiot not to like go and do this opportunity. Like go and live in LA. That sounds super cool.
Yeah.
So shout out to my parents for being like super supportive there. And it was initially supposed to be like this 4-month rotation, so just for busy season. Beverly Hills in the winter is a little different than New Jersey in the winter. I'm not like cleaning my car off in the snow anymore. And things went really well.
Wait, let me take a step back. For those who have not lived in the snow, you don't like process this. So, I know about this, so I'd think about myself driving to work, and I think about Sluty driving to work. And I'm like, that guy has to wake up and shovel snow off his car, maybe break some ice off his car. Then he's going to walk through a bunch of salt on the ground and get salt all over the shoes and pants and stuff. We have to dress up for work. And it's like just all the little this job's already hard enough and stressful enough. To have that stuff added to your plate just felt like so annoying to me. So
And then you just didn't see the sun for about 3 months, right? Because you're working, again, you got to get up early to go to work,
Yep.
and then you're working late. So if you don't go out for lunch, like legit, I'm working Saturdays too. So like, I did not see the sun for like 3 months. Like that wears on you. That's not good for you.
it does. No.
So anyways, life in Beverly Hills was pretty good. And yes, when I landed in Beverly Hills, my cube mate is now my wife, my now wife Kendra. We met there. We were on an audit job together. We worked on that job together for a couple of years. Finally, we started dating.
What was the reporting structure? Direct.
It wasn't direct. I didn't review Kendra at the end of the day, but I was a manager. She was a senior. She had more tenure on the job. So when I was looking at like, we're going to have to tell people we're dating, I was going to have to roll off this like big job. And it was cool because when I came out to LA, I was working on the biggest client in all of RK on the hedge fund side of things. So, it was just a completely different experience. I got to really understand how these bigger fund shops work and, get more into the private equity world, which was very different than like the hedge fund reporting structure and valuation structure. So I got just a lot more exposure because they invested in PE, real estate, just normal hedge fund stuff. And, I think we did like 60 audits that year. 60 financial reports.
Wow.
Came. So it's a volume game.
Yeah.
And that's what I was good at. I was good at pushing things through, executing, getting things over the line. That's why that one partner was like, don't worry about his hours. Like, we're getting shit done.
Shit gets done, yeah.
And that's like all he cared about. He's like, we got 60 audits to do. Like, this guy is just like, I don't have to worry about like these 20. So anyways, like really good experience there. Yeah, obviously met Kendra, which is the best experience in audit. And it's cool when your partner, you can kind of, the struggles you're kind of going through, right? You don't want to talk about work all the time, but you can help each other out through it.
Yeah, you can commiserate and there's something to bond over. But
exactly.
I think you guys obviously found a great balance of it's not all you have a ton in common outside of work. And so it's not just always work with you guys. It's a wonderful relationship. It's been awesome. So, okay, first of all, I think your move to Los Angeles was brilliant and worked out really well for you. That one as well. Want to tell us a little bit about how the family expanded after that? Maybe we could talk a little personal life before we hop back into Flowcast.
Well, yeah, let me take it back actually before family. At that time, I'm coming out here for 4 months, right? So I hit up Mike. I'm like, Mike.
I didn't know if you want to go to the story or not. I'm happy to.
I'm like, Mike, you've got a condo. Like, can I crash with you? Mm-hmm. And Mike was nice enough to let me crash.
What day did you move in?
I moved in pretty much January 1st. Mm-hmm. And when did you get married to Allison?
January 16th.
January 16th. So, yes, I moved in right before the wedding. It was nice that, while you're on your honeymoons, I could take care of the dogs.
That was great.
That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I thought I was a pretty good roommate.
You were a great roommate. You cooked, you kept stuff clean. It was great. You're very low maintenance. It was awesome. And plus, people think it's really like so ridiculous. Like, oh, we just got married and you were living with us or whatever. Reality is we both knew you since freshman year of college.
I've known Allison for just as long.
You guys are just good of friends, and it's like not a big deal. And Allison and I had already been living together for 6 years at that point, so it really
if anything, sounds a lot. Allison was like pumped, like I was moving out. She wanted more people in Syracuse from Syracuse moving out there. Right?
Oh yeah, no, she was excited to have you move out, and absolutely like. Yeah, not much of a challenge accommodating you living with us.
It did reach a point, I think, when nothing was specifically said, but I think it reached a point like once I decided, hey, I'm staying past this 4 months. Like, I should probably get my own place.
Yeah, go get your pool house.
Yeah, exactly. Moved into a pool house. Yeah, and that's about the time we started talking Flowcast.
That is so. Man, I'm trying to. I can't even recall how I started the conversation with you. Do you remember?
I remember seeing an Excel workbook that was essentially like a wireframe mock-up of what Flowcast could look like, but you were coming from the audit perspective.
Okay, so I was starting the audit idea at the time.
The audit idea, and me working at a mid-tier firm, that's probably where you would kind of start seeing if somebody could use a solution like that, because it might be hard to break into the Big Four. But at some point during that conversation, you pivoted from the audit idea to just like thinking more broadly about accounting.
Yeah. Specifically, that was a shower moment when I realized the market was way bigger for
So smart.
accounting departments than audit firms. And
Yeah, because breaking into the Big Four would have been next to impossible.
nearly
They all
impossible.
have their homegrown systems. I think a lot of base Flowcast is really based off of the audit workflow that you had. EY had their own homegrown system. We used a different system at RK, but it's organization, right? It's tracking your work, saving that documentation, tying it out, right? All the basics are there. You have that in audit. Everybody leaves audit, and you've got nothing in place.
It's so we tell the story of, and it's true. I had the pain of accounting. I had the idea for Flowcast because of that. Blah blah blah. The more detailed evolution of it was, I was getting ready to leave Cornerstone anyway, and I was like, I think I can start a SaaS company. Like, what do I know? And like, what's a bad product out there? And I was like, the audit software I used was terrible. And so that was like, could I build something for that? Blah blah blah. And as I was thinking through that, that's when I was like, wait, this thing I'm doing right now is such a pain. And it's actually really similar to it.
Yeah.
So can you take like the audit software concept and apply it to the close and
all
do
of a
it
sudden,
well?
Every company in the world has an accounting department.
So your market gets much bigger than mid-tier audit firms once you go to selling to companies. And so that was
we'll get it into. We're going to go through some of your learnings, but what I didn't realize is like the MBA that you kind of got in SaaS.
Oh my gosh.
Right, like all the metrics and everything like that. Like I've had to learn that over the years, and could probably teach a class on SaaS at this point, but you kind of had that as a nice foundation, and knowing that business model was just kind of core to like how everything was built.
Well, that's why like accounting is so powerful for learning about a business if you really want to, and like put yourself in quite frankly, a stressful situation. Like I didn't join Cornerstone at a chill time to be working there.
Yeah.
It was like I took on a lot of work, man. I worked more at Cornerstone than EY, but if you like, let me put the silver lining on working a lot. Like you work more hours, you learn more stuff, you get more reps. And so I worked for 7 years and accumulated the amount of knowledge that might have taken someone else 15 years to accumulate. And so that puts you in a really good spot. So the positives of working hard and grinding, as long as you do it right and you're doing like different stuff and learning and expanding your skill set, I think it can be really good. But man, your SaaS metrics now, piece of cake at this point. So okay, I came to you with the audit idea.
Yep.
I was probably searching for Colin at the time, searching for a CTO at the time.
I didn't really know you were doing that, but because you were consulting on the side.
Yeah.
Right. I had like quit my job at that point because I was pretty much like, okay, Mike's kind of working on this. Maybe this was a little bit later, but like Mike was kind of working on this. Like it's getting a little bit more real. I needed to pass my CPA exam,
Yes.
7 years in audit, gotta check that box. So I pretty much wanted to just take some time off and knock that out before my next role.
Yeah.
So I was kind of between jobs, but also had a little job security when you kind of came to me.
That was, so I was like wrapping up my consulting at Cornerstone, and I knew that was going to come to an end. And so I was getting ready for the next thing, working on this idea, which you saw the audit thing. Then, I had met with Amplify, the startup accelerator, and that's when they were like co-founder, product, customer, then we can fund you. So I went out to go find Colin. You're studying for the CPA in the meantime, getting all that sorted out. I think at some point in the middle of that, we right when we built the first product, then we're going to Amplify. And when I got the money from Amplify, that was when it was like, okay, we at least have something here and we have a conversation about it. And you were like, I think you were even struggling with like whether you should continue with the CPA exam.
Yeah.
Because we had some conversation where I was like, dude, if you're going to be the co-founder of a company like this, you got to be a CPA. Like,
I think there was that. Well, I got a 74, I think, on FAR. And like that. So I had to pass FAR and then like my BAC reset at that same time. So it was just kind of ball breaking.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did suck it up and I did finish. But yeah, at that time, I actually had another job offer on the table. So everybody thought I was a little crazy for like quitting audit. I wanted to see how this played out. But I knew I had this other job offer on the table, and I actually got the offer the same week you got into Amplify.
Wow.
It was like the exact same week. So a little serendipitous there. And I pretty much told them, I was just straight up and honest. I'm like, hey, this sounds great. It seems like a good firm, but I got to see what happens with this. And they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Let us know if it doesn't work out. Right. So, there wasn't going to they weren't holding a job open for me, but I knew I at least had a lead. I had something I could go back to, and I could have probably got a job.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing about accounting is if you're in the right place, we were at the right time in our lives. Like we didn't have kids. I had paid off my student debt. So I was just in a good place, like financially, to take a risk.
Yeah.
And, the stars kind of aligned there. And I was just like, yeah, I'm going to wait and see how this works. I think you got into Amplify. Like, I think we say like, July 1st is like the start of the company.
That was when we incorporated. Yeah.
That's when you incorporated.
That like
And then I joined 2 weeks later.
Yep.
So the initial
we're an established company.
You're an established company. Yeah. Yeah. The initial thought from you, I think you told me like, yeah, we're going to see how things go. We'll probably need you in like 3 or 4 months. And then 2 weeks later, I don't know if you just needed somebody to drive you down to Venice every day, but you're like, Chris, I need you. I was like, okay.
I need you to drive me. No, that's not what it was. We just had a lot of, well, go ahead. You tell me all the stuff you started doing.
Yeah. There is just a lot of stuff that pops up, right? So early on, Flowcast, like you're doing everything selling, right? So whether that's trying to find new customers, so the entire sales cycle from start to finish, and selling investors, right? Those are 2 full-time jobs. Cullen's doing multiple full-time jobs on the tech side of things. He's designing the app. He's coding the app. And then there's everything else that falls in between that, right? So my first job at Flowcast was actually closing the books on Flowcast. So I actually learned a lot doing that because we were talking about this today.
Yeah, lunchtime discussions.
It's crazy how little you actually learn about accounting in audit. Like the nuts and bolts of accounting. And doing my first close actually on Flowcast was super helpful because you had done like the first close before that. You had wrote out all the procedures and the checklists, and I pretty much just followed it. I rolled forward the documents and I followed it. So, nice pitch for Flowcast even at that
It automatically rolled forward and then you copied it.
Exactly.
With our replication engine.
Saved me a ton of time.
Great time savings. Use technology to empower your co-founders.
Yeah.
Yep.
So anyways, I was closing the books, but in that, I was in the product, so I was finding things that broke. So that's when I really started working with Cullen a lot, and I was like our QA for anything that was net new. I think you were driving more of the product strategy at that time and like the things that we needed to build.
It was higher level, like the look, the UI, UX, and then kind of explaining the behind the scenes stuff. And then you were really
I was trying to break the thing, using it myself, like onboarding our first customers. That's where I kind of got into the customer success realm. And before I even knew what customer success was, I was doing that. And then outside of that, just every other thing, right? So marketing, quote unquote marketing, that's what I would call it. Like writing a blog post like once a month.
Getting the website up.
Doing terrible web design. I think the lesson there is just like, I just tried to show up every day and tried to add value and just take stuff off of you and Cullen's plate. I did not have like a title. I guess I was technically like COO, but I didn't have a title when we first started. And I just kind of showed up one day. Like, you didn't even really tell Cullen that I was showing up, right?
Yeah, great communication. I don't think I did.
Yeah, and I think Cullen's reaction was, well, if this guy wants to work for next to nothing, yeah, sure, we could use the help.
I think that's exactly how Cullen felt about it.
It's funny because like how much Cullen and I like work together now.
Yeah, you guys work way more than I do with him. It's wild.
It is wild. It is wild. But I just tried to show up every day and like add value and like pick up whatever was missing. Like even once we started hiring employees, like I was doing the Costco runs.
Yep.
I was like office manager. Like pretty much. Any jack of all trades.
Grilling on Fridays.
Exactly.
All the good stuff. Exactly. Yeah. Dad of the house. That's for sure. Well, I think back to, the early days, and we're actually going to talk about like hiring specialists and whatnot a little bit later, but you're just kind of jack of all trades doing everything. And our bar was just like, man, as long as something's, I remember, not terrible.
Not terrible was the bar. And like, yeah, there's a lesson out there of like, you can learn anything on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Like, so I just tried to figure things out, right?
Dude, I watched so many videos about SaaS, read so many blogs, you read all this stuff, and it's like it is amazing. You know, I had the real world knowledge from Cornerstone and seeing all that, but then like the parts I didn't get, like the product development side of it, how you iterate into things, how you sell stuff, like that's what I didn't learn about that at Cornerstone. And so you can learn so much about all of it if you just like really want to. And that was in 2015, like or 2013. Today, there's so much more stuff available.
Well, yeah, and that's also the interesting thing is like SaaS and technology, it's just all evolving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like you could go to school for that and get a bunch of knowledge. It's learning on the job and learning what these other companies are doing and being curious is the best way. Hey, this worked for this company. Let's try that.
Yeah.
Right?
And I do find it wild. Two of the most important things in starting a business, fundraising and selling, are not college majors.
Yeah.
You don't learn to do stuff like that in any class in college. You know, they tell you about the structure of fundraising terms, but not like how to actually do
how to
something
do it
like that, how to make it happen. So, yeah, we're just figuring out a bunch of stuff along the way. But fortunately, we were able to do that. So, all right, you joined Flowcast, and now so we went from doing things where our bar was not terrible, and fast forward 10 years, and now we have an article on Forbes called 10 Things I Learned as a Decade as a CEO.
I haven't read it.
I haven't read it. I spoke about it. So, all right, team want us to rip through some of these. So I'm going to, I think, let me do this. We spent a good amount of time on the intro, so I'm just going to read through the 10. And then I know you have your own list that you kind of wrote separately around what you've learned. So maybe we could talk about some of the ones where we like align or just any of the ones that we want to, we find interesting from there. So, all right, my first one is surround yourself with experts. So it says no one person is good at everything, oftentimes trying to take all the results in failure by hiring a team of experts. Now, this is something I learned over the course of 10 years. When we were doing it, like we were just discussing, we don't have the money to do that stuff.
You don't have the money for experts.
But as you scale, that's where it's like, hey, what am I not good at? How do I offload that work to an expert and then just do that over and over and over again? Number 2, find a good co-founder mix. Totally matters. Like, be thoughtful about who the founders are. Care about more than just your role is another one. Have a big goal from day one. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, let's jump into that one a little bit. I think that's what you've probably added to the company the most is like the big picture vision. Like I feel like especially early on, it was on like Cullen and myself, like really in the weeds, dealing with problems and executing. And Mike is selling this big vision, right? You have to think that way in order to sell to investors. But what I found fascinating, and maybe this is some of that, experience at Cornerstone, is like I think you had like a forecasting sheet, what customer count we were going to end at like the end of 2015, and it ended up being like shockingly accurate. Like you're off by like 2 or 3 customers, which was just wild. So you were always like metrics driven in terms of how we could build and get there. The big goals were out there, but you need to break them into smaller goals to actually get there. So, I think it's good to have everybody rallying around something big, but then you got to break it down and execute.
Yeah, could not agree more. And so ours were really 2. I mean, build a public company, and then the quantifiable goal was get to 100 million of annual recurring revenue. That was and we broke that up a little bit, and then it's how do we get to 2,500 customers, $40,000 average contract value, and then every year it's how do we plug towards making all that happen. And
it becomes formulaic at some point. I mean, there's a lot of strategy and changes and tactics that go into actually like achieving those goals, but that's how you can kind of see if you're on track.
Yeah, it's very. All right, so good. I'm glad the big goal didn't scare everyone too much. Transparency is key. Certainly something we live at Flowcast. Maybe we can go back to that one in a second. Give people a purpose. You want to be competitive. Totally. Don't skimp on customer service. I'm so glad this was a big part of our ethos and still to this day. Tech can be your biggest supporter, as written by our product marketing organization. I hope everyone is enjoying the self-deprecating humor as we go through this article. All right, and then the final one here is building a startup is a journey unlike any other. So I wrap up on the nice uplifting message. And so which ones you want to circle back to of those 10, or you want to go reconcile against your list of 10?
Yeah, let me look at our list. Let's talk about like co-founder dynamics a little bit. I think that's kind of interesting. One, like, I don't know how anybody could do this solo.
It blows my mind.
Like, that sounds super lonely.
Yeah.
Because like misery does love company. a lot of times, like our co-founder meetings, we've gone and ebbed and flow of like, at some point it just had to turn in lunch where we just kind of hung out because we just needed to like, have a break.
I remember after COVID.
Yeah.
That was COVID because we used to go to lunch and we go out on Mondays and it was like we'd maybe more than half the times it wasn't even like work related. We're just like shooting the shit, talking about
politics,
whatever.
Life,
like deep topics. Like we've got like right into it. It was a lot of fun. And then COVID hits and it's like we're remote, we're dialing in, we're having like kind of lunch on Mondays, or I think we just like we're having meetings on Mondays or something.
Yeah.
And I remember it's
like a status update meeting kind of thing.
Yeah, it was just so. It wasn't cool. Yeah. And I remember I don't want to say you snapped, but like, cause you don't really like snap, but you were just like, hey, I think it'd be really good if we like had like a Monday lunch where we just like don't really talk about work and just like hang out. I miss hanging out with you guys. And I was like, yeah, me too. So we put that in and that was really nice. Like having a good founder dynamic. And I mean, it's not always good. Like we've had,
I mean,
I think you and I have been pretty solid, but Colin and I have had some challenges
I've been in the middle of that. I think that's what I hang my hat on, of like 10 years of this company, a lot of me in the middle of like keeping you guys on track. Mm-hmm. And I think that's important. I think the other thing is that I had on my list is like, you should be able to argue, but you need to commit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's the relationship the three of us have always had. Or when things do go south, it's like people aren't saying what they really want to say.
Yeah.
I think we've gotten a lot better at that over the years. There's a lot of trust. I think it starts with trust, that people are, coming from the right place and doing their job well. But arguments are good. They can be productive, but at the end of the argument, you got to commit.
Yeah.
You got to go forward together as a unit.
Arguing is so good as long as it's productive. Like it's how you arrive at the right answer, and that's part of why I also think being a solo founder would be really it's lonely, but like also just considering all the different angles, different people have different perspectives, and like bouncing ideas off each other. There have been plenty of times where like I thought we should do something one way, and you guys both had compelling points, and cool, let's do it that way. That's great because we care about Flowcast, not being right.
Yeah,
that's what matters.
And I can tell when somebody's like really passionate about something, where it's like, oh, I need to like maybe change my perspective here, or I need to take some time to like understand where they're coming from because I'm not getting it. And then usually by the next time we meet, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're right. Like I'm on board. Let's go.
And I'm not saying I'm great about that, but just like that is,
everything's not perfect.
Yeah.
Right? But like, I think we do have a good dynamic in that regard.
That was one of the things I really admired about the Cornerstone founders. Like fight, like not like us, like the CFO always did everything with the door open, except occasionally founder would come, the CEO would come in, and you'd hear the door would close, and you'd like hear yelling from inside. I remember one day it was like super aggressive, and then he comes back in at 6 p.m. and I'm thinking, and I sat out front, and I'm like, oh man, just like what now?
Round two.
And he brought in a bottle of tequila, and they're just like hanging out, shooting the shit, like nothing happened. It was just like, wow, that's like the exact dynamic you need to be out. Your friends, you can argue like hell about your business and everything, but like at the end of the day, it's also business and friendship, and we're friends, and it's like, let's move on from that crap because it's work, and we can separate work and friendship and everything. So a lot of people, say you shouldn't do business with your friends, but I obviously disagree with that one. I think you have a good quote. Can I steal it? Like, just don't do business with or you can work with your friends as long as they're not idiots.
Yeah, exactly. Don't be friends with idiots.
Yeah.
Or the friends who you should work with.
Yeah, I got friends. You're the only one who's at Flowcast.